Hi folks, Soccer Card Markets with another video. I did promise to put out a shorter video, but let's see how this one goes. So yeah, I just want to talk about how soccer card collecting differs from the other main sports, and we'll get into a few other things along the way. So yeah, firstly, like baseball, basketball, NFL, obviously the big sports stateside, they do have some international appeal for sure. To a lesser degree, ice hockey. For example, ice hockey is quite popular in, well, you could say cold countries like Scandinavia, Russia, and Czech Republic, places like that. But yeah, when it comes to the sort of history of sport, um, those sports just can't quite match soccer for just mass appeal, and yeah, we'll get into that in a short moment. Yeah, so the first, as far as I could sort of figure out from brief sort of research, the first organised match of soccer took place in 1860. There's differing accounts between what the first sort of organised game was. In this instance, it was Sheffield United and Hallam FC. Hallam FC, since I have no idea what's happened to them since, but Sheffield United still going strong and in the Premiership this season. There were sort of organised games before that, but yeah, so around the 1860s seems to be the first sort of recognised timeline for that. So overall, I mean, it's really quite astounding. That's 104 years of sporting history, if not more. So quite the quite the historical element to it all. And we'll get into the other main sports shortly. So yeah, sort of first game timelines. Again, the dates in these might not be entirely accurate, but the consensus from what I could see was roughly within these timelines. So the first basketball game, organized game, was a college game in 1896. Baseball's first was actually pretty early, 1846. And I think that ties into the fact that baseball is still probably one of the most collectible sports as far as I can gather, because it does have a rich history, and yeah, it's been going for a long time. You can see some of the sort of old style uniforms and stuff here. It's kind of interesting to watch, before Nike and Adidas and all that kind of start creating some wearable material instead of these heavy sort of cotton shirts and whatever. And then American football, the first sort of game I could figure for that was around 1869. Again, another college matchup. I mean, it looks like these guys are about to operate on somebody, not take to the pitch and batter the heck out of the other team. But again, it's some way back. It's further back than I would have thought for a lot of these sports. And then ice hockey, 1875, and that was the first sort of indoor organised game. I don't think that picture's from that actual game, but it just gives you a bit of an idea of the old sort of older style uniforms and whatnot. So continuing on, yeah, the first professional games, and again, these dates maybe not bang on, but good enough for for this video. So soccer's first professional game was around the 1880s, so 143 years back, which is pretty incredible to think. The first football league was created in 1888. That's in England. Again, I didn't do too much dig into different countries and when their league started and whatnot. But as far as I'm aware, the first ones were in the UK, and surprisingly, FIFA was organised quite early on too, back in 1904. Um, Baseball's first sort of pro game around 1869ish. Later, of course, actually, I think the National League was formed in and around that time also, which is way further back than I would have ever thought. And then, of course, later on became the Major League Baseball and those different divisions and whatnot. Basketball, really surprising how late pro basketball took off. It wasn't until 1946. So in terms of history, basketball's actually still quite a young sport compared to the other ones mentioned thus far. And ice hockey, the NHL formed in 1917. So again, yeah, quite, it's over 100 years back, and yeah, kind of surprised me a bit. And American football, the NFL was formed in 1920. So between, MLB, NFL, NBA, they've all got quite rich histories in terms of, having 100 years of professional sport played with all the players and the stats and fandom related to it. Yeah, like just a little bit of kind of background as well. Just like derivatives of all these sports have existed. Like cricket from the UK became baseball. Rugby turned into American football, or is it handball? Because that's pretty much what they use most of the time. And I think even soccer was actually one of the old sort of narratives is that football evolved from a game of rugby when people just started kicking the ball around or something. Or it might be the opposite actually. Rugby came from soccer because someone picked a ball up and started running with it, or something to that effect. But yeah, surprisingly rich history really across all the sports, with basketball really the exception in terms of when the professional league was set up. I know there was stuff like it was at the ABA beforehand, but yeah, that surprised me. And of those sports, the sort of main sports in the US, basketball's overwhelmingly the biggest of those. If you look to sort of, countries out with America, basketball's played in many countries and well supported. And yeah, I guess in terms of soccer, it's a question of, will Beckham, Ibrahimovic, and now Messi, will they sort of collectively really push the MLS and soccer into sort of, to really compete with the mainstays of sports in America? I really do think that's going to be the case. And I would imagine the owners of the other leagues will be a little bit worried at this point, especially with the World Cup coming up in 2026 in the States as well, and Mexico, I think. Okay, next up we have, just the general appeal of soccer. For instance, like you have iconic moments witnessed by hundreds of millions of people, if not billions, depending on the game, at the World Cup. And then likewise, certainly more recent years, Champions League is just a huge draw for sports fans, especially soccer fans, obviously, but probably has some interest to people that don't follow soccer that much. And yeah, that's just two examples. There's we'll get into some more elements of the sort of appeal of soccer shortly. and yeah, like the US centric sports, they just don't really have those globalized moments. You can see some of the pictures down here. Pele, Maradona, Roberto Carlos's free kick, Ronaldo, Zidane's lunatic headbutt on Materazzi, Mario Götze's winner for the 2014 World Cup. Like moments like that, you could probably just show those pictures to just a random bunch of people on the street, and quite a high percentage would at least recognize some of those moments and have some memory of what happened and the events that surround it. But outside of the states, like you could show somebody a picture of Wayne Gretzky, they probably wouldn't even recognize him. Like they might recognize the name or something, but like the just isn't that same sort of those same moments sort of tattooed in people's memories. And the same goes for NFL, baseball as well. But I mean, basketball's maybe the exception. I would say, like sort of Michael Jordan era, with the television and everything that happened around then, the broadcasts and that really boosted basketball's appeal. I still think that's easily the most watched outside of the States. And I can't really see that changing anytime soon either. So what else makes soccer unique that other sports don't really have? Well, there's international games, domestic games for multiple countries around the world. Like just about every country has its own football league, and they can compete across international lines and UEFA Cups, Europa Cups, even the Conference League and all that sort of stuff. South America, you've got Copa Libertadores, you've got the Asian Champions League. American sports just don't have that. They're just very fixed in what they are. Occasionally get Olympic Games or something, but like it's just not on the same level as the World Cup, or I would even say the Euros. You've got rich and diverse leagues just all around the world. Like they've all got their own sort of styles of play, and the sort of types of coaching and tactics and all these sort of things. Different support even. Like I've already sort of mentioned, you've got iconic players and moments with, I've said a massive audience, but like just huge audiences, hundreds of millions, if not billions, watching, especially World Cups, and I think even the Champions League's probably well up there in the hundreds of millions for viewership also. You've got, I'm not saying there's not rivalries, obviously, in the sort of mainstay American sports, but you don't get the same sort of derby atmosphere, I don't think, from like Boca Juniors, River Plate, Rangers, Celtic, City, Man United, Dundee United. Had to put a Scottish team in there, or a couple of Scottish teams. And coincidentally, just so as I'm mentioning them, that's the closest derby on the planet because their stadiums are literally about half a mile away from each other. So yeah, that's an aspect. Probably critical, I think, to what makes football different is really promotion relegation. I mean, it just doesn't exist in American sports. So the teams are just always there. They're always there. Even the crap teams, like they just stay in the league and keep playing, and they never go down a step. There's no real motivation in a way. If you're like the bottom of the NBA, like, well, you're kind of like, well, there's nothing to lose. You can't lose. You can't get relegated, and then all of a sudden you're making like 80% less money than you made the previous season. So I think that's a real major thing that separates soccer and makes it super interesting. Is you don't even know if your team's going to be in a particular league, at the end of the season. So yeah, you've got great players across all the top 5 leagues and beyond as well. So it's not like you just have one pool of players. Again, going back to the NBA, it's not like you have one pool of players that come through college or a few guys from Europe or wherever that make it through. There's you could get sign a player from anywhere on the planet, and that's completely fine. Whether they're good or not, well, that's a different story. But it does make that more interesting, I would say. The all the different transfers and possibilities that come from that, and the potential to get a player for like $500,000 that becomes a phenomenon, like Henrik Larsson, for example. You've got sort of the local heroes and villains, sort of things that sports fans remember. I mean, okay, you get this across different sports, but I thought there is something about a football stadium full of fans that makes it a bit different from American sports in terms of, just in terms of, I don't know, like sort of the noise and, people shout all sorts of stuff at players. I'm not saying all of it's acceptable, but there's just more of a kind of rowdiness to the whole thing. And then to get to the scoring system, like a common complaint here is that soccer's boring because nobody scores, or it can be a goalless draw. Well, sometimes those are some of the most exciting games. Sometimes they're not. But football or soccer is it's quite a fair game in that the winner gets 3 points. You can get a draw, which can be a difference between getting relegated or not, or winning a championship or not, or getting into Europe. So there's just there's a lot of intricacies to any particular football game, depending on what place in the season it is. This notion that that soccer is boring, I can kind of understand it, because I actually didn't like it initially when I came over from the States, and basketball is my main favorite sport. But then over time, I really got to appreciate it, and I just fell in love with it. And now I don't really care for post Michael Jordan basketball. And I've already touched on the prospects, and then from all that, like, that's a huge collectability factor, and there's that's not even a full list, obviously, of things that I would say that separate soccer from other sports. I'm not saying any one sport's way better, worse, whatever. This isn't really a direct comparison in terms of what. What's more valuable and so on, but I do think that soccer is just massively collectible due to the huge scope and the global nature of the game. One sort of striking factor, another one that sort of separates soccer from other sports, is you get drama down to the last second. Like, you can have a game that goes 3-0 to one team in the first half, and then they come back and win it 4-3. Like, that's not predictable at all. Whereas you can get a basketball game where, it's just, well, the players are just scoring points, and then it's not until maybe the last 5 minutes where you're like, okay, this is going to be a tight game. Who's going to actually win it? And then, of course, again with basketball, not to kind of pick on it too much, but like winning a regular season basketball game is like it just doesn't seem there's that much riding on it. Whereas in football, soccer, yeah, every game can really, be monumental in terms of winning a title because all the points are cumulative. There isn't a playoff event at the end of the season. Well, they do have that in Belgium and a few other leagues, which I think is a terrible system. But yeah, so that's another thing. And yeah, just every goal is really a major deal. Whereas, like someone can hit, I don't know, like 3 home runs in a game. That's obviously an amazing achievement. Probably rare, I'd imagine, but you can still lose a game. So yeah, just like goals, they're difficult to score, and yeah, they're just everyone's a real major event in terms of the outcome of any particular game. Whereas any one basket in a basketball game is like, unless it's the last one to win a game, is like, well, it's just another bucket. Yeah, and then I've already kind of touched on this too. The broad media coverage, soccer really is kind of considered the world sport, and it's the most simple game to play. You don't need a football. You can create a ball out of some socks or whatever it is, and then your goalpost can be just about anything. And yeah, that's part of the reason why basketball's similarly quite popular as well elsewhere, is because you can create a basket out of some like an old tire and a post or whatever. So the sort of more simpler sport, the more appeal it tends to have. Yeah, so it really does beg the question: how did it take this long for soccer to really explode on the collecting scene? Um, I mean, soccer set's been around since pre-World War One. Um, looking back, it really is quite baffling that it's taken until around sort of 2020 for the whole thing to really kick off. And kudos to anyone that had loads of Messi and Ronaldo cards and whatnot, because they've made an absolute killing from that. Yeah, and now that has exploded. I'd say it's still a fantastic time to be collecting the soccer card market. People are still kind of shuffling around, try to decide what they prioritize, what they collect, what sets are important, all that kind of stuff. What I will say though is, the sort of real Klondike kind of gold rush moment has definitely ended, I think. Um, like cards 3 years back, or more, within the last, say, I don't know, 5 years, like on the right hand side, you see the Pele rookie. This is a little clip from USMT collectors video. But yeah, you look at the pricing there. In the space of 6 years, Pele rookie PSA 4 has jumped from $612 to 6,600. I mean, that's just a huge leap. And I would say the price isn't unjustified. I would just say it's very surprising that it was valued so low 6 years back to begin with. And yeah, so across the board, cards are difficult to find cheap. Whereas even a couple of years back, you could easily get real steals in terms of the potential for any cards or stickers out there. Part of the boom, I think, is due to a really excellent rookie class from the 2020-21 season. Then you've got sort of compounding factors like the kind of COVID boredom. A lot of people just kind of sitting around, not really doing much, needed something to do. The emergence of Haaland as well, I would say, is an absolute key factor in the whole thing too. Because until he kind of came along, it was like Mbappe was kind of the main kind of guy at that time, that looked like he was going to, kind of challenge for the sort of GOAT of his era. Obviously, Messi was still playing and Ronaldo, but coming to the end of their careers, relatively speaking. So, yeah, those are just a few interesting points, I thought. And the dust is settling. Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, I've noticed a major change in cards and stickers in terms of pricing. Especially in the last 6 months, possibly even the last year or so, depending on the players. It's just incredibly difficult to get sort of low-end prices on, guys like Bellingham, who was always going to go to a big club. I'm not sure why there was a sudden spike in his cards when that happened, because that just seemed like a guarantee. And then you got some sort of other phenomenons like Pedri just completely dropping off. It's like, well, he was injured for a short while. He's not suddenly a terrible player. Yeah, and then just sort of, and there's some real weird trends, like the uptake of players, or sort of uptake in collecting and prices. I mean, this has kind of been mentioned before, but yeah, Haaland spiking in the winter of this year, um, like, and they fell after he'd won a treble, which was just bonkers. I mean, just made no sense whatsoever. Obviously, you could somewhat at the start of the season, it kind of looked inevitable that Man City were going to win the league. That certainly wasn't the case, with sort of, I don't know, 6 to 8 games left, but it did turn out to be the case. But they only just won the Champions League. That was a very close run against Inter. So yeah, there's some strange things happening, and one of the worst things is just people like just baking in the price of players, and very young players often as well. Like, even, I don't know, like Matthijs Tel, his rookies are just really expensive, considering he's not really not done much to deserve such high pricing. And yeah, that's probably the main thing that is pissing me off right now. Partly, obviously, because I can't buy certain players' cards cheaper than I'd like, but just seeing it across the board, there's a lot of players just way inflated card prices. Yeah, so just to continue on from that thread, yeah, it's just very, very tough to find earlier cards of players who sort of fulfilled on their promises, 2-3 seasons back, at reasonable prices. It's just it just ain't there unless you get very lucky on particular listings. And yeah, a little side note on that: the UK market is frequently very inflated. Part of that is just the 20% tax on products here. Like, to ship a box over, there's 20% tax on it. So that does, and then that also means, I would assume, that there's different markets and different sort of bubbles and things happening in different countries. Certain sets are notably becoming sought after. So there's kind of kind of narrowing down of what people are starting to see as collectible now that there's been 2 or 3 years of kind of frenetic soccer card collecting. Rookies across the board, just sky high prices, very little to justify these. I mean, it's the same in any rookie class, like any given year, pretty much. Like, most of these guys, they'll never be more than, sort of decent players, or, occasionally very good players, maybe across a few seasons. So yeah, I mean, still the biggest gamble out there is on these rookies, and yeah, the crazy prices that are being asked for them. And yeah, that kind of rookie mindset is really kind of swept over from the States. I think in the last couple of years too, especially the UK anyway. Um, yeah, nothing. So there's just way more cards that I can see that are slabbed. Mostly just completely pointless. Yeah, like a PSA 10 base card going for like £70, £85. It's like, yeah, get a grip. That's just stupid. Just a waste of everybody's time and money. If anyone's daft enough to pay that sort of money for some of the stuff that's on the market. Yeah, and this is another thing I've seen from Sports Cards Radio. They've said they've had videos with sort of the cumulative kind of market totals of different sports, and consistently, like the soccer market is supposedly down. I can't see that for a second. If anything, it's surely up. Maybe not up on, you know, the batshit bananas prices paid in 2021 for some of these cards. I mean, like Mbappe's Prism PSA 10 going for like £5 grand. I mean, what kind of lunatic was paying those sort of prices, anyways? But yeah, if all these car prices are tied into that spike a couple of years back, well, that just doesn't show the picture at all. And from what I can see, yeah, like just about every card I'm bidding on is, I've got competitors bidding on them. Cards that I would like for a certain price are often, £10, £15 more than I'd ever want to pay for them. So yeah, just finding bargains, while still possible, is, yeah, you have to put quite a lot of work in, it seems. And yeah, so overall, I would say it's still a seller's market for sure, and that's even, accounting for various fees that you get charged from various different auction sites and whatnot. Because yeah, the demand's still there. There's loads of bidding going on, loads of cards getting bought, loads of high end cards being bought, and that's at the super high end. So like Haaland 101, rookie cards, all the way to Messi, Ronaldo, down to your sort of base cards, or like numbered to 299 cards. So yeah, that's kind of how things are going just now, and I thought I had a bit more to say, but probably given the time, it's just as well that I don't. So thanks for tuning in once again, and I'll catch you next time.